Chapter 26. Some Small Good Tidings. "Listen, Father, can you hear that?" said Andor. "There's someone else down here. Let's call out to—" "Not so quickly, son. It might be Vilmos." All around them they felt movement, the scuffling of tiny feet. There was also a strong smell of fur. "Rats," said the prince with a shudder, as the rodents scurried over his knees and dragged their cold tails along his sides. Down the other end of the tunnel, Vilmos's torch cast the faintest glow, but it was enough for Andor to see they were surrounded by hundreds of rats. Some were grey and some were black, and some were the size of cats. Black eyes glinted like nail heads. Suddenly, the rats raised their heads as one. Something had disturbed them. They went scurrying back up the tunnel towards the light. "Quickly, son, move faster. Just up here there's a spot, if I remember rightly." They trundled awkwardly on the wet floor, bending their knees and pushing with their feet in a crab-like crawl, glad that the swarming rats masked the sound of their heaving and gasping. In the distance, the light grew brighter, and they could hear someone muttering. "It seems Vilmos has chosen this tunnel as the first one to explore. What bad luck," whispered Nicholas, grimacing in the dark. "Veer a bit left, and hurry." At Ragnar Castle, Queen Chloe sat and wept. Irina knelt beside her, while Mihaela and Jolene stood side by side, pale and anxious. Octavia cuddled little Casimira. "Vilmos, when will I ever be rid of him?" cried the Queen. "He steals my child, now he steals my kingdom. I said one wrong word when we were young, and now he pays me back, over and over." "Be calm," said Irina. "Ragnar has a powerful army." "Yes, but King Nicholas's army is just as strong, maybe stronger. For years our strength lay in our friendship. Now we are certain to be destroyed." "It's not Nicholas but Vilmos who fights against us. Perhaps we can clear up the misunderstanding, call a truce." "You don't understand," said Chloe. "With the two kingdoms split, the barbarians of the Narrowlands will conquer us, and life as we know it will be over. We'll be ruled by brutes. The king of the Narrowlands has no real power. Everyone obeys the wicked dragon who lives at the furthermost tip of the island." "The one who kidnaps children," said Irina, remembering. "Yes, they call him the venerated dragon," said Chloe, "and he's the mouthpiece of Nartisk." Irina shivered at the very name. "Who's Nartisk?" said Jolene in a small voice. "Don't you know?" cried her mother. "What have they been teaching you in the nursery? He's the evil god, the one opposed to the Shining One and the goddess Jun." Irina and Octavia exchanged glances. Irina was grateful for Octavia's presence. The buttery smell and coarse jute clothes were a touch of home. She had a matter-of-fact way about her that contrasted with the Queen's rising hysteria. "Take her to the nursery," said Octavia, handing the baby to Mihaela. "Your mother needs rest. Now, Your Majesty, I'm a medicine woman trained by your Aunt Razel." "Ah, Razel, where's the old witch now when the kingdom needs her more than ever?" Irina could feel her mother's fear like a hunted animal in the room. "Please, my lady, take some of these drops I have prepared," said Octavia. She drew a tiny leather jack from the pocket of her apron and pushed out the stopper with her broad thumb. "They will calm your fearful heart." But the Queen would not be consoled. "It's no use. We are lost. I know it." Without a moment to spare, Nicholas and Andor edged around the carcass of what seemed to be a dead bat and dropped themselves into a foul-smelling cavity. They held their breath and waited. Seconds later, the shining black boots of Vilmos passed by, followed by hordes of vermin. The edge of Vilmos's drawn sword flashed in the torchlight. "He means to kill us," whispered Andor. "Keep quiet," replied Nicholas. It was too late. Some of the rats stopped at the entrance of the cavity, their noses twitching. Andor and Nicholas drew back as far as they could, huddling under a piece of stone that jutted out from the wall, avoiding the torchlight. "A dead bat," said Vilmos, seeing the carcass. "That's all." At that moment, in the far distance, and muffled by the stone walls, came the sound of a horn. Vilmos turned and ran back up the tunnel, leaving the men once again in total darkness. "That was the battle horn," said Andor. "We've got to get out of here," said Nicholas. "How on earth are we going to climb out?" "There's one way. I just hope it's still here." At Ragnar Castle, the festive mood had shifted to one of war. Most of the candles had been put out. By the light of a finger-bone moon, soldiers and village men were given helmets, shields, and swords. King Harman moved among them, holding a lantern. He was grave and attentive, making his inspections and speaking words of encouragement. Hiding behind the silk wall hangings, Irina watched her father put his arm around a soldier. "We are brothers," said the king. "Thank you for fighting." To another, after straightening the strap under his chin, "We fight for the truth together, as the men of Ragnar have always done." Irina's father was a great king. She saw the men's faces light up when he spoke to them. She yearned to be alongside him, wearing armour of her own. Captain Kellen had sent his fastest riders to the four corners of the kingdom. The king was hoping for more farmers and villagers to swell the ranks of his army. Amicus had taken a message to the chief of Ralston. The captain marched up to the king. "I bring some small good tidings," he announced, bowing. "Many have come to fight. There's no sign yet of Vilmos." And the Sylvan has returned with a reply from Ralston. Kellen handed Harman a scroll, which the king scanned quickly. "Men," he said, raising his voice to address the gathering, "I have good news. The people of Ralston will not rise against us, but give us their support." Then, quietly, he said to Kellen, "The chief writes that King Nicholas had already sent word to him. This gives me hope. Nicholas may still be alive." Irina wished that Harman would speak to her in the same way he spoke to Kellen. But it would never happen. In Harman's eyes she was just a girl, and barely more than a stranger. Behind Harman she caught sight of William in armour. It was awful to imagine the gentle farmer in battle, but she knew he would want to give everything he had to serve Ragnar. Irina slipped out unseen and stood at the far end of the hallway by the window. She wanted to howl at the moon as she used to when she was a wolf girl going on the hunt. Instead, she was to be cooped up with the weeping queen, or in the nursery with her sisters and the baby. Perhaps Harman was right. She had no experience in fighting. She'd never used a sword, and she didn't have the big muscular body of a warrior. "But I have the intelligence of a human, and the instincts of a wolf," she whispered to herself. "That must count for something, surely. What would Razel say? Do what is true. What does that mean, do what is true? Said Irina a little crossly, arguing with herself. What is true? The king is my ruler and I must obey him. That's true. But I know I can help. Amicus flew through the window into the passage and down onto her hand. She cupped him and lightly kissed his feathery head. You've done good work tonight, she whispered. Then a look of resolution crossed her face, and she turned and marched back into the great hall before her courage would fail her. The warriors stared at the princess, still in her violet robe. She dropped into a deep curtsy, blushing to the roots of her hair. What is it? King Harman asked, surprised, and not particularly pleased to see his daughter in the war room. Father, I just thought, I don't know, in the war, when you fight, you could fight like the wolves do, Irina stammered. Go on, said Harman. His arms were crossed, and the fingers of his right hand were tapping his arm impatiently. Wolves hunt in packs. We split up, and some of us distract our quarry while the rest come and attack by surprise. You aren't a wolf any more, Irina, said the king. He seemed amused. You needn't worry about us. I am a seasoned warrior, and so are many of the men here. Even the farm boys have had training in the midsummer duels. Oh, I see. Please excuse me, said Irina. She turned to leave, feeling foolish. Harman watched her go, and his brow wrinkled. Irina was a mystery to him. He put her out of his mind. Planning for tomorrow's battle demanded all his attention.